How is your industry changing because of AI?
Our industry is probably one of the more drastically changed, I think, because of AI. So ChatGPT, I believe, just turned three. And I think a lot of people have been using it for 2+ years. It's absolutely affected the way PR agencies do work. So that is to say, I don't think I'd be able to find a PR agency where AI isn't pretty significantly integrated into the workflow. What's been interesting to see is that over the 3 years of ChatGPT and others, where PR people are using AI has shifted a bit. Maybe initially it was a little bit for tasks that AI kind of sucks at, like writing. Now it's more for research and maybe data analysis and other backgrounds. So it's definitely changing in the context of AI integrating into workflows. But I would say also, given how important, given the intersection of PR and AI search, there's a lot more focus now on how the output of PR, particularly how earned media, media coverage, journalistic work influences AI and how companies show up in AI search. So there's a booming business and a whole lot of noise about how PR and its outputs affect AI search. And I think for people in the business, that represents a pretty big business opportunity.
Hey, business leaders and marketers. What if your brand could be featured right here? This ad spot could be yours. This channel is watched by a dedicated audience of ambitious founders, executives, and professionals who are actively looking for tools and services to help their business grow. If you want to put your brand in front of this highly dedicated audience that's difficult to reach, I'm currently looking for a few strategic partners for the channel. To learn more about sponsorship opportunities, click the link in the description. Let's grow together.
Why should startup founders and investors care about these changes?
I think they should care for a couple of reasons. Number one, startups, in particular pre A round startups, often have a lot of trouble with PR. I am usually of the mind that a pre A round startup should not hire a PR agent or agency. Maybe after you get past that A round, it's time to kind of think about it, particularly if you're in specific industries, consumer facing industries, but B2B as well in some instances. And I think the changes really have made the playing field very, very different. And then the playing field is no longer level. Some agents, some agencies are egregiously behind because they haven't kept up with this stuff. And if you hire those people as a tech company, as a startup, you're going to run into pretty big trouble because really AI for a lot of people, I think, is the new window on the internet. It's a new frontier for reputation for sure. And you need to make sure that whatever the PR function is that you're working with understands and can exist in that new world.
I've mentioned this fact to people that I know in that regard, where if you're looking to hire someone to work with, whether it's a developer, whether you're trying to hire an employee or whether you're trying to find a CFO or whatever it is you're looking for, if they are not already using AI and promoting to you the fact that they're using AI, you probably shouldn't hire them because you're not going to get the best service. Now, granted, I get a ton of pitches from PR firms that all look like the same AI wrote it, and they all are espousing how amazing I am and how fantastic my interviews are and how they just happen to know another person that would be a great fit for me and all in paragraphs and paragraphs of praise about that person, which I can't stand. But but yeah, people are using AI for those things, whether it's beneficial or not. It's being done.
Yeah. And often it's terrible. And I think we all have had those moments. Some of us a year ago, some of us 3 years ago, some of us somewhere in between, probably, where we first saw what the output of AI was. We first saw ChatGPT ripping off, I don't know, a press release or a pitch or whatever it was, an essay. And it was amazing to see. But for a lot of people, at least smart people, I think, there's more and more realization that these tools, these LLMs, have really severe limitations, at least for now. Will they forever? I don't know. But they have severe limitations, and that there are moments and use cases to use them in, and then there are times not to. And the one you just alluded to, sending a pitch to somebody who runs a podcast that's entirely written by AI, he's probably not going to go over too well. You're up on this stuff. Like most people, you've seen, tons and tons of AI slop, and it's just not going to work. I think it allows people to be lazy in a way that they've never been able to be lazy before, do their job in a half-assed way to a degree they've never been able to do before. By the same token, obviously, it empowers people to do things at scale in a way they've never been able to do before, and ideate or maybe analyze data or some of these other things, do research in a way they've never been able to before.
Has AI helped you to run your business more efficiently?
It certainly has. So we do primary research. We do primary research for ourselves, and we do primary research for clients. And I would say the data analysis capacity, when you get survey responses from, let's say, 1,000 or 2,000 people, the data analysis capacity is pretty amazing. Of course, it requires oversight because, as we know, this stuff makes mistakes, it hallucinates, it comes up with bizarre conclusions, particularly if you work it a lot. It's like an intern that gets tired easily, I find. It's been really interesting for the data analysis capacity. I would say for us as well, in terms of just being able to go and look up things, let's say look up what a competitor's been up to, analyze media coverage, has been very powerful. And one of the more interesting things, and I suspect other PR people that you speak to or are listening or hear this will also would agree with this. One of the more interesting things that PR has been good for, and any tech founder, regardless of the stage they're at, can do this. It's a really useful media training tool. So you can ask AI, you can feed it a bunch of articles from John Smith, who's a journalist at Magazine X, and you can say to it, take on the personality of John Smith based upon what you've read. I am a founder who's just raised a Series A round for his robotic company. What questions would you ask me if you were John Smith? And we have found, as a media training tool, this is incredibly useful. It's incredibly efficient in terms of the time it takes our staff to put together really robust media training sessions. And this is anecdotal, of course, but the proof's been in the pudding. When we have trained clients this way, using AI, leveraging it, the output, the final product has been a hell of a lot better in some cases.
I hadn't thought to do that. What I have done is say to Gemini, for example, I want to create a product, but I don't know all of the details yet. Interview me about my idea. So the end goal is that we have an MVP plan that we can start developing immediately.
Really smart. Really smart. And this would apply, I think, as well to I'm on Sand Hill Road and I'm going to go see the guys at Sequoia or whatever. Knowing what you know about partners X, Y, and Z at Sequoia, what are the questions I need to prep for? It is handy for these kinds of things. Again, in our business at least, we're pretty careful about how we use it for public-facing creative work, for public-facing written work, because I think it generally sucks at those things. And I think, and many people I'm sure would agree with this, that's just because all it can do is pull from the corpus of what is and not the corpus of what could be.
The dream of AI is to have a one-man billion-dollar company. Have you honestly found that AI is capable of enabling you right now to fire your team?
No, it's not. It's absolutely not. We are running leaner and more efficiently as a result of it. And our firm has been growing at a rate of between 15 and 20% for the last 3 years. We have not expanded the team despite that growth rate. And just for context, because I know some people are probably SaaS founders, others who have kind of hockey stick levels of growth. For a PR agency, 15 to 20% growth is quite a lot. Growing for a PR agency at more than 20% of the year is quite stressful and puts a lot of pressure on the organization. Do people do it? Of course they do. But that's just important context. We haven't had to hire. And I think part of the reason we haven't had to hire is because we have been able to integrate AI tools. One of the more interesting things, and this is just my own anecdotal experience, but I share it because it's a narrative out there in the world. In terms of knowledge work, which PR absolutely is, in terms of knowledge work, AI has meant for us that we haven't needed to hire particularly more junior people. We have been able to outsource a lot of the tasks that might have been the work I did when I was 24 or 23 or out of college to AI. And I don't really see that changing. I don't think that's necessarily a super positive thing. I know that every generation faces its challenges, and perhaps that's this generation's challenge. But that's been our experiences. We just haven't needed much hiring, and we certainly haven't needed junior hiring.
I've been having this conversation with people as well, which is like young people want jobs, but young people can't find jobs. And it's because they don't have the skills they need to beat an AI, which in the past they weren't competing with AI, they were competing with other people. And
Mm-hmm.
now they're competing against people who know how to use AI as well. The problem is something long term where if AI right now can replace or prevent the need to hire someone junior and will only get better over time, but a human wants the opportunity to get better so they can reach the mid or senior level positions, but there's no opportunities for them to get that experience, then inevitably there won't be any people to hire in those middle and upper levels when people start to retire, which is soon. And especially because boomers are working longer than ever, and Gen X is, they're like they're in their early 50s now. Um, so there's not much time left where young people will have the opportunity to get the experience they need to go into the middle and senior levels. And so AI will basically make it unnecessary to have those junior levels, but then there's nobody to hire. And so then there's no skill growth. And so then there's no up, middle, and upper level. So you're effectively in a race to train AIs to be better in this middle and senior levels to fill the gap of people who don't have the skills and experience.
It's a tad frightening. It's more than a tad frightening, isn't it? And I completely agree with you. This is a discussion we have had. My partner and I, both Gen Xers, both early 50s Gen Xers, late 40s for me. She just turned 50. But it is absolutely a real thing, and it's absolutely a problem. And there has to be some way to allow these folks, many of whom are just as intelligent as any other generation, right? Nothing is different. It's human beings, but they need a chance to get the reps in. And the way they get the reps in is different than the way I got the reps in or my father got the reps in, certainly, but they still have to do that. And the scary thing is, as you said, we're not letting them do that right now, it seems, because the story I told about not hiring junior people is a conversation you've had, is a conversation I have heard all over the place across a myriad of industries. So it's a real thing, I believe.
And it makes me scared to have a kid.
It does, I'm sure. I'm sure.
Like, I want to have a kid, but like generally, the idea is your goal is to do everything in your power to make sure your children have a better life than you've had. And I think my generation is the first one to look at the world and go, I don't know if I can do that.
Yeah. Especially in the last 3 years.
Yeah, I mean, I've had this fear for a decade.
There are, yeah, to paraphrase Donald Rumsfeld, there are these unknown unknowns that we don't know what we don't know. And that's, I think, always been the case. I remember I was around for Internet One. I was young, but I was around. And I remember some of the doomsday talk and some of the how this was going to kill community and it was going to do a range of really nasty things that were so fundamental to human existence.
But it has.
We got through it. It seems it has in a way. It hasn't in some ways. It's always a little bit more bizarre than the naysayers at the time said, and maybe a bit more mundane than the naysayers said also. So I think that will probably be the way this plays out. But it's definitely changing the job market for sure. And I know you're in Portugal in North America. There's been a lot of noise recently because job numbers have suffered a little bit in the United States and Canada. People are attributing that to the adoption of AI. Am I sure that that's the case? I have no idea. That's not my expertise, and there's a lot of factors out in the world. But it is an interesting signpost on the highway, to be sure.
A lot of companies have blamed AI for firing people. I think it's just an excuse for a lot of these companies to just get rid of people. I think the companies that are actually letting go of people, it's not because AI is replacing them. I think while AI, as you've said and as you've experienced, AI is really good at some things, but you need a person to use the AI to get the benefit from it. Like even with agents, you need a person to create the agent, right? You need a person so someone 100 years ago who operated a machine in a factory, instead of them manually managing the machine, they can now code for the machine, right? So they've become developers instead of people using their hands to turn the machine on and off, right? So you can create software, right? So those jobs changed. They didn't go away, they just evolved. So I think there's a lot of that happening where people aren't being fired because the job isn't necessary. They're being replaced with people that understand how to use the AI necessary to keep the company running.
Correct.
And right now, there are far fewer people who understand how to use AI than the opposite. And so positions are not being filled, and or because companies are scared of the macroeconomic and geopolitical risks that exist, that they're afraid to hire more people because they're not sure that they can afford to keep paying them when a recession is finally proven to be the reality, because it's being ignored right now.
And it seems there's a confluence of potentially very nasty factors converging. So that's certainly we're a consumer tech PR agency. Our clients almost entirely make things in China, in Vietnam. There's a lot going on. If that's your reality, there's a lot of sleepless nights if that's your reality. And I'm not making a political statement one way or the other here. This is something that I think applies to everybody. So it's certainly an interesting time as far as that go. Layer in AI, layer in the risks of it, layer in the risks of hiring somebody who doesn't have the skills to use it or manage it, and it's a recipe for people freezing and not doing too much hiring.
So you mentioned that you're working with people in China. What are you seeing? Because I think a lot of people are curious about China. I talk about it as much as I can, but I haven't been there in 8 years. So there's a reality, there's a gap in my knowledge of what's truly happening right now.
Yeah. So we're seeing several things. And again, my lens on it is primarily consumer technology companies. So there are, and there continue to be, as there have always been, a range of Chinese companies that are effectively factories that started a brand. And most of these are, OEMs that are playing a low cost game, and they're going to make a charger that works and they're going to sell it on Amazon, and that's what they're going to do. That's going to be their distribution channel. They don't care about retail. They don't really care about brand equity. They just want to make a charger, make it good enough to sell on Amazon and sell it. That's going on. I think that will continue to go on. What is interesting is now there are more and more Chinese brands that are playing a game that might have been the preserve of Americans and Europeans and other first world nations, in that they are trying to build sustainable brands. When they come to North America, they are not just thinking about DTC and Amazon. They're thinking about retail. They're thinking about different types of retail, from Costco to Walmart to Best Buy to whatever it is. So there's a little more of that coming. There's a little more of we understand and we value brand equity, and we can still make things that are great, just as China has done for two plus decades, 3+ decades. But there's a little more marketing savvy and brand savvy, and that is putting a lot of pressure on some incumbents here who might have gotten a little fat and lazy and comfortable, I think.
Hmm. I was well aware of Chinese brands. That the thing around Amazon and China is that Chinese factories have been known to steal the IP of the people that are their clients and then go and sell it on Amazon at a lower price than them. And kind of like what Amazon does. And that has pissed off, I can't tell you how many people. I mean, it's got to be at least a few tens of thousands of brands,
Hmm.
because China does not care about the IP. So hopefully, this is a good shift. Hopefully, they stop stealing the IP of their clients. Technically, they've built the technology, but because the client is paying them to do it, to produce it. But yeah, I disagree with those methods. Um,
Certainly. No, there's no room for that.
I noticed I've been introduced to some Chinese brands that are making millions of dollars a month off of Amazon and spending wild amounts of money on ads to make that happen. Just literally there's a term called the buy box on Amazon. The buy box is the where the ads run, the sponsored products. So for people that don't understand, so they can outbid you on the buy box because they have more money than you'll ever understand what to do with.
Mhm.
Because the factories themselves are generating tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars a year, making products for other people. And then now they have this secondary sales channel where they're taking the products that they've made for these people and selling them on Amazon and spending all of the clients' money on ads to go off and sell the final product themselves under their own OEM. And if you don't know, they have these really weird, nonsensical names that are all in caps lock. That's how you know it's a Chinese factory that's behind it.
It's funny. It's very funny. But yeah, this is look, there's money in that. I think one of the things that's been interesting for us is a lot of, yeah, I'm generalizing here, and I want to be careful because I am generalizing. A lot of Chinese companies think about product and they think about sales. And those are the two things that each CEO is focused on. They're often very product focused companies, which that can be a very good thing. But sometimes some of these sort of less bottom of funnel marketing elements, and when I say less bottom of funnel, I'm talking about things like PR. I'm talking about things like AI search. I'm talking about things like outdoor billboards, whatever it is, things at the top of the funnel that are awareness plays. They don't think about those so much. They don't like spending on those things. And those are things that I think a lot of people know are required. And you have to spend on those things often for a long, long time to build a brand and to build brand equity. And they're not something that your performance marketing team can go into a grid and go, this did that. It's often more nebulous. And so I'm not necessarily here to counsel people on how to compete, but consumer facing companies, consumer facing startups who are worried about competition from overseas, be that from China or be that elsewhere, may do well to understand that sometimes these overseas competitors don't have a full grasp of full funnel marketing spend, that they really tend to focus on the bottom of the funnel, and that they really tend to focus on performance marketing because performance marketing is generally fairly easy to attribute ROI to.
I used to serve Chinese startups when I was living in China. I used to help them raise money from investors, but I also helped them with like their white papers. You know, they were done in Chinese, or their marketing contents, their community building was all done in Chinese. And they wanted access to a Western audience, but they didn't have any ability to create something in English and trust that it was correct. And so I made a lot of money helping them to do that many years ago.
I'm sure. It's one of these things that, and I know you have a startup audience, and it's something we tell startups a lot. We tell mature companies this a lot. If you want to come into a market, especially if you're coming in with something that's even mid-priced or certainly premium, the assets around the products matter as much as the product. So if I want to come in and I've got, I don't know, a Bluetooth speaker that's going to sell for, over $350 because it has nice sound, or over $500, whatever the threshold is, I'm going to need to make sure that the speaker sounds great, of course, but I'm going to definitely need to make sure that the instruction manual is written in English that doesn't sound like a kindergarten kid wrote it and isn't rife with grammatical and spelling mistakes. And a lot of companies, particularly from certain parts of the world, when they come in and they say, okay, we're going to be premium, they don't like spending on these things, these sort of peripheral things that are not the product. And that ends up being a bit of a problem when certain types of people, particularly journalists, certain kinds of influencers, certain members of the public, get their hands on the product and go, well, okay, I paid $500 for this Bluetooth speaker, but I really don't appreciate that the instruction manual is incomprehensible or something.
I just noticed this recently actually with the Chinese made video game. So like I play PlayStation 5, I play Steam on PC sometimes, and I watch a few people on YouTube that talk about games and game releases, especially from like Japan. And this one guy that I watch, he was talking about this game and it looked amazing. It's one of these, I don't know how much gaming you know, but basically it felt like a spiritual successor of this game that like I grew up playing, that everyone has been desperate for like a successor for. But the company, while the IP exists and the team exists, they refuse to basically make a second. We don't know why. It doesn't make sense. So this Chinese company came in and they basically decided to do it under its own brand, and they made it just different enough that it's their own IP, which is fine. Beautiful looking game, beautiful looking sound, the story, everything looks amazing. But the guy that I like to watch, he, I guess, got access to some video of it, and he said, it looks like a 5-year old wrote the English translation. He's like, I'm worried about the game now. He said, I was
Hmm.
really excited for it, and now I'm not sure. And he's got 100,000 followers. So it doesn't sound like much, but these are highly engaged fans and audience members of his community.
Yeah.
And if he says, I'm not going to buy this game, like it could potentially sway my decision to buy that game. So, while, it sounds like is a Chinese company that was highly focused on the product, but forgot the foreign audience that's supposed to be playing it. Because the Chinese are really not good with translation.
The trust comes across many fronts, and trust for the modern consumer goes beyond product. Trust is the box. Trust is the customer service. Trust is did the shipping show up on time? Trust is a range of things that we're sort of talking about here. And I think it's very easy for companies to forget that, particularly new companies, particularly companies that might be on their first, second, third product, who are so focused on making a great product, as they should be. But these peripheral elements can really cost you if you get wrong. And your example is a very good one. It's something that we have seen more times than I wish I had, because it's all too common, frankly.
You've been doing this, I imagine, for a long time, long enough to understand the business well, because a lot of people I've spoken to said you need to be doing this business at least 10 years before you have an inkling of an idea of how it works. What's the most important thing you've learned from doing this business?
The most important thing that I have learned about running my own company is to run it by numbers. So, like a lot of PR people, math was not my favorite subject in high school. It was not where my competency lay. I had other passions and things, including words. But running an agency business by the numbers is absolutely critical. We get, and this might be overkill, I'm not saying people should model this, but I get a P&L updated every week because we want to keep a very close eye, not only on financial metrics, but you also want to keep a very close eye if you're running an agency on some of those agency metrics like utilization rate, like how your staff is tracking time, all of that. So running the business by the numbers is absolutely the biggest thing I've learned internally. In terms of external advice that I would have for people about how to do PR, just don't overpromise. Underpromise and overdeliver, and you will not run into trouble. But if you try to sell, if you try to put a Pontiac chassis on a Cadillac, as GM once tried to do, I believe, you will get into plenty of trouble. And there is no way that any brilliant PR person can save you in that instance from the hellfire that will come to you from media, influencers, the public. So just under promise and you will be fine.
Thanks for watching. If you liked this insight, I've handpicked another video for you right here on the screen. For more actionable strategies that get you real results, hit subscribe.